What do you think need to be done to safeguard the ethical standards when we use AI in HR?
Yeah. So I think we have been tracking research in AI ethics. And I think over the past about maybe like 5 to 7 years, we have seen about a 5-fold increase in the activity and interest in AI ethics measured by like research on a topic and so on. And I think AI ethics applies, the more risky an AI application is, the more AI ethics is required. To give an example, I think many of us, we do like shopping on an e-commerce website, and sometimes these websites are powered by AI recommendation systems. So if you have bought maybe some headphones, they might try to recommend some other electronic goods that you might be interested in. And if that recommendation is a mistake, the cost is very low. You just get annoyed for like 5 seconds and then you let it go. So that's not a very high risk AI application. But that same technology could also power like HR transactions like recruitment, promotion, performance management. And these would make or break someone else's career. So if you miss out on a good candidate, or the candidate is wrongly cut from the process, firstly, it's a loss of talent. Secondly, that the candidate might take legal action against you. And in some countries, we actually see legislation where candidates are able to ask for a second opinion by a human person rather than an AI system. So it's not just ethics, it's starting to spill over into legislation and regulation as well. And I think Arnold, being in Europe, Europe is, as you know, in the forefront of many of these discussions. So I think that's the first takeaway when we think about ethics. We need to calibrate the amount of governance by the risk of a wrong machine decision. That's the first one. The second element is, I think, centered around the way that machine learning systems work. So I think at a very high level, what happens is you want to label some data and then teach the machine these labels and use the machine to make a prediction. So as an example, you might want to use it for what does a good candidate look like for this job. And so, you know, in doing that, it's very easy to fall into the trap of like, okay, I want to teach this machine learning algorithm what a good candidate looks like. And I look at all the best candidates in the company and say like, okay, this is what good looks like. But in doing so, the machine picks up bias that exists in the current system, in current reality. So often, unfortunately, both Arnold and myself are male. And so if we were to, you know, figure out what would make like, you know, a speaker in HR in the spotlight event, if you were to train a machine learning model on me and Arnold, the model might learn, oh, I should look for a male person at this age. And so in doing so, instead of removing bias, we actually amplify the bias that exists in companies. And so, you know, this idea of fairness, discrimination, and bias is a very common pitfall in HR machine learning systems. And so we need to do checks and balances to make sure that systems are using the right data and not data that is, for instance, like sensitive demographic information, like gender, like age, like ethnicity, country of origin, all these things. We must make sure that machine learning systems are not using these as signals. And also, you know, sometimes, very often, large companies don't train our own models, but we buy software. And when we buy software, we also need to put like similar like audit mechanisms in place to make sure that third-party software is not fair. It's not unfair, not discriminating against, you know, goes against the ethics of the way your company operates. So yeah, I think, you know, there is risk calibration, there's fairness and bias. And maybe just one last one would be, I think, the automated nature of decision-making. It's quite different, as I mentioned, for a data scientist who works in HR to use some methods that might qualify as AI, because that data scientist is qualified to understand and interpret. But sometimes when we use AI capabilities that's embedded in software, this software is making automated decisions. To go back to a previous example, if you have 100 resumes and you want the top 10, there was no human who checked the other 90 resumes. And so that's an example of an automated decision. So we should be especially careful of not just like bias and fairness, but also automated decision-making, and make sure those are the right controls are put in the right places and the human in loops in the right places to mitigate against those kinds of risks.
Yeah, that's interesting, because to me, when you describe that, Jason, it reminds me of, for instance, artificial intelligence in cars and self-driving cars. You should always have your hands on the wheel. You would never really want the software take complete control of your car from A to Z, and then forget completely about the driver. So HR is on the driving seat, and they probably should, HR or the business leaders, or you, at least a human, should still have their hands on the wheel and not let the machine decide everything.
I think Arnold made a very important comment, because that is the tension of the value of AI and the risk of AI trying to balance out. Because if you always put your hands on the steering wheel of a car, then you lose the benefit of a self-driving car. Like, what is the point if I still need to like help the car drive? And so, if you put in too much controls, you start to lose the benefit. And there is that kind of delicate balancing act. And sometimes, when our team starts a project, I start by introducing to say that, I'll probably annoy you, so I will apologize ahead of time. It just depends on how much you're annoyed based on too little or too much control.
Thank you.